Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Ron. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to provide you a background in planning and zoning in like 5 minutes. This is amazing. It only normally takes a whole semester and 3 years to teach students this. So fundamentally, what is planning, right? Well, what is planning? It's the broad and inclusive process of creating the vision for your city, right? It's a shared community vision for people made by the people of the city. In Denver, we just adopted an update to our vision, our comprehensive plan in Denver. And it's based on, and it carries forward a whole number of aspirations for housing, for the environment, for the quality of life in the city. And these policies, or these primary vision elements, then shape all of the other kind of planning activities that happen in the city. In terms of scales of planning, well, there are a range of scales of planning. In Colorado, we don't really have state-level planning. States like Florida and California do, but in Colorado, we have some degree of regional planning. What really matters, though, to us in Colorado is home rule, is local planning and municipal planning, right? So in terms of planning, in most planning conversations that you would find in your community or throughout the state of Colorado, they're happening in your community, as I'm pretty sure you all are familiar with. So what do plans do? Well, the first thing that a good plan will do, it will assess the past, present, and future of where the city has been and where you aspire to be. The important part of plans is that they set the policies for future development, and they set priorities and strategies and actions. So in terms of the assessment of past, right? In the update of Blueprint Denver, we recognize that there's significant growth still coming at all of us, right? And so what to do about that? But we also did a very deep dive in understanding from previous plans that went on before, how has Denver been performing according to what we tried to accomplish in the past? And it turns out that Denver has performed pretty well in terms of ideas that were cast in those earlier plans about where to grow and priorities for growth. In the new plans, we've identified new policies for future development. And one of the things that loomed large in the creation of the update of the plan in Denver, for example, is a discussion about equity and access to opportunity, access and diversity, right? And so these policies are the starting point of many of the plans that are now in Denver. And the plans that include recommendations for land use, they include recommendation for transportation, a whole number of things like this. But fundamentally, right, in regions like ours, the plan provides a strategy for growth, right? Now, have any of you noticed in your city or in this region that we've had much growth? Yeah, it's not a small topic, is it, right? And change is not always that comfortable to do, and this is why planning is so important, because it gives your community the ability to then say, we can't stop the growth. The question is, how are we going to manage through it, and what kind of city do we want to become? What kind of city are we now? So what plans do is nothing unless you implement them, right? And there are primarily 4 tools that we typically talk about in terms of how to implement them. Regulations, infrastructure, partnerships, and what I describe as next level planning. Okay? So in terms of regulations, those are the tools like zoning or historic preservation standards or design guidelines, right? The regulations that apply. The second are infrastructure tools, things like major infrastructure investment in transportation or parks and other kind of services and amenities. Partnership tools, right? The city doesn't do everything. Government doesn't do everything. And we don't want government to do everything, right? So there are ways in which we can implement our plans that take partnership between government and non-government organizations, government and private sector entities. And the third is next level planning. That sometimes when we do, for example, a citywide plan, we can't get down to all the details at a neighborhood scale or at a block scale. And so there might be next level plans to provide more detailed guidance for particular areas or systems. So of these, I know that you want to talk about form-based codes, so they really fit in the regulatory tool side. We have infrastructure tools and partnership tools. And so the best way I can describe this, you all are familiar with Denver Union Station, right? That's that was a major project and the most complicated thing I've ever worked on. But in order to make it happen, it relied on partnerships across multiple levels of government, public and private sector players. Next level planning, what's happening in Denver. Now that we have the citywide plan done, neighborhood plans are the next piece that will help further flesh out how the big picture view of the city gets done. So zoning is the major regulatory implementation tool. What is zoning? Well, zoning is simply a tool for implementing plans. It's a police power, right? It's a law. It has to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. And one of the things I want to, if there's anything you walk out of here with tonight, is to know that zoning is not planning. They're not the same thing. Planning is the policy foundation. The zoning are the rules, the regulations to get you to planning. Okay? There are three primary things that we can control in terms of that zoning typically controls. That's land use and the building form, like where buildings are, how tall they can be, and the intensity of those buildings. So conventional use-based zoning, and Amanda, we could stop here if you want.
Stop right there.
Okay.
And then we'll keep going with that when we get into the second presentation. How's that?
Maybe, but okay, we can try.
Watch.
Okay. Well, let me just finish here. Is that there are two types of zoning: conventional zoning, which is the way that most codes across the country work today. Norrie and I are involved in a lot of different places, bringing new approaches to regulations. Right? Conventional zoning, I would say, is very focused on use and a little bit of form. Right? There was a time when people were really concerned about the mixing of residential next to other kind of uses. But as it turns out, today, while there's concern about proximity of uses, people really care about how buildings look and how they relate to each other. And so one of the things that set the stage for form-based code discussion is that conventional use-based zoning, in practice, has really focused a lot on separating uses, and in fact has created a lot of disconnected enclaves of auto-dependent sprawl, or what we call today. The other major problem is that in many older cities, established cities, the zoning codes that were enacted actually made the old neighborhoods illegal or non-conforming. Right? The basic idea was, why would we want to have old houses, right, in the 1950s, right? But in fact, we actually like them today. We have historic districts to support and protect them, right? So this is a big thing that many cities have to get over, is fixing the zoning so that it doesn't continue to do this.